Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guests are Nate and Thomas from Reality Czars. First, a couple of announcements. Check out our new affiliate, Brainsupreme. Brainsupreme contains the highest quality ingredients to start your microdosing journey. Learn more, visit their website, brainsupreme.co. If you visit brainsupreme.co/discount/FKN15, you're going to get 15% off the entire order. That link is also in the description. Great ways to help support Forbidden Knowledge News. Watch the Forbidden documentary, I Call It Louisiana, available on Tubi, Roku channel, and multiple streaming platforms. Get a Rokfin premium membership at rokfin.com/FKN Plus, and always download our audio podcast through Spreaker. Today I want to welcome back to the show Nate and Thomas. Nate is co-host of Reality Czars. He is a government abolitionist, truth seeker, and Bigfoot enthusiast. Thomas is also co-host of Reality Czars, a self-taught programmer and credited musician. He was also a Disney interactive designer and animator for 10 years, and a conspiracy theory connoisseur for over 20 years. He has been a comic book publisher for over 10 years at paranoidamerican.com. Nate, Thomas, welcome. How y'all doing?
Dude, doing great. It is a fucking beautiful morning. God is good. The world is good. Well, the world's kind of crazy, but my world is good, and that's what matters, I think, because everybody lives in their own universe. I don't know. It's a weird
Got mine. F you.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm fantastic. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
I mean, we're three dudes in rooms wearing headphones and on microphones, so things could be a million times worse.
Yes, they could. They definitely could. Doing pretty well over here as well, and it's good to see you gentlemen again. Always a stimulating conversation, and I'm sure today will be even more seductively stimulating. Who knows where the discussion can go? You told me about some Bigfoot pamphlets that you will be dropping soon. Excited to hear about that, and we'll see what other weirdness we can jump into, as well as other projects you guys are working on. First, for those that may not be familiar, reintroduce yourselves and tell us about what you're working on and your show.
Okay, I'm Nate from the Reality Czars. I don't know what the heck we're working on right now. I'm working with a group of paranormal investigators. I know we're going to get into some more Bigfoot documentaries here pretty soon. We have some credible sightings, like pretty close to my house, actually. Columbia County, Northwest Oregon. There is a ton of Bigfoot activity, and recently. So I think we're going to go hit the ground running and try to go find Bigfoot if we can, if he is something that you could find physically. But also here with Thomas, we're working on the pamphlet starter package on Bigfoot in general. It covers absolutely every single thing about Bigfoot. Thomas is the man. Everyone go to paranoidamerican.com. Thomas, tell them a little bit more about what we're working on, dude.
Yeah, I mean, jumping right to that pamphlet, if you're familiar with the Chick Track, it's one of those. If you're not familiar with the Chick Track, you should go online and look it up immediately. It is absolutely part of American history, comic book history, and conspiracy history. All three of those things, which are planted like squarely in the middle of what I've been trying to do for the last decade plus. So if you don't know me, when I started, I worked at Disney for about 10 years. While I was there, I said, screw drawing all this Mickey Mouse and Goofy crap. I want to draw MK Ultra stuff. I want to work on documentaries and games about mind control and false flag operations. And the management wasn't as happy, but some of my coworkers were. So that kind of launched this whole thing called Paranoid American, where I've been trying to put together comics and toys and games and all the things that you would see Disney put out, trying to do it to that level of quality and that variety, but all conspiracy theories, all occult. And one of those things is this Bigfoot pamphlet that takes the form of what like a traditional Chick Track or a mini comic. And the point here was for all the normies and for the OGs. So if you're a normie, you'll learn everything new on every single page. Even if you're an OG, not only will you find some new stuff, but you'll probably find some things that's like, damn, I can't believe they included that. For example, we got Harry Mary in there. We've got the historical accounts of LDS pastors coming across what they consider to be an original Nephilim Bigfoot. We've got homeless Bigfoot. We've got interdimensional Bigfoot. We've got like every different version in America. And we basically try and find all the different Sasquatch, Yeti, Bigfoot, wild man, ugly, stinky, red-haired stories from all over the world in history, crammed them into this pamphlet, and at the end included like a little Bigfoot hunting guide, what to look for, what to bring, how to look out for those men in black at the very end, because if you find Bigfoot, they find you. It's a whole thing. So we try to put it all into this little mini comic. And if you want to find out where to get it, you can just go to doesbigfootexist.com.
I love it, man. That sounds like it's right up my alley. Let's go through some of these categories. I heard you say Harry Mary. I've actually never heard of this. What's that?
So Harry Mary, there's a whole bunch of historical paintings that depict Mary, but she's completely covered in long flowing hair,
Like the
dog
Virgin
man
Mary?
Bigfoot style hair. The Virgin Mary, absolutely covered in hair. And this is a consistent theme that actually continued for more than just a century by some of like the high court sort of artists. So this is not just something that we kind of made up. It's been around forever. I think linking it directly to Bigfoot might be a slightly new interpretation adaptation, but when the puzzle piece fits,
You
and
can
don't
link
have to,
everything
like,
to
slam it
Bigfoot
in
these
there.
days, man.
Well,
But we've had guests on that have made this connection and kind of taught me about this. They were saying that Bigfoot was one of the European hairy men, right? That they came down actually from like the Caucasus Mountains or whatever. There are these big hairy people that they were Sasquatch, and so that Jesus was also half Sasquatch. It was this absolutely mind-blowing thing, and they were showing like historical evidence for this, and this is where they turned me on to Harry Mary and made this case. And dude, I think there's something to it. I think Jesus was a Sasquatch.
and I've got some names and dates just in case anyone out there wants to be a stickler or is interested in looking up more of this on their own. 1492, one of these paintings, and the pronunciation of this guy's name is an absolute nightmare, but it's like Riemenschneider. So Riemenschneider creates something called altarpiece. And then in the 15th century, something called artist named Sforza Hours, he also depicts this fur-covered Harry Mary. And then there's another one in 1460 from Paloielos, Assumption of Mary Magdalene. And again, these are three completely separate artist depictions of the Virgin Mary, absolutely covered head to toe with brown fur. And this being in like the 14th and 15th centuries, but it goes essentially back to in the Bible, Esau is described as having red hair all over his body at birth. This is in Genesis 25. And this is like one of those OG examples of like this wild hairy man, because a lot of these Sasquatch stories, they do specify a stench, like you smell them before you see them. And usually the color of the hair, if it's not matted in mud and dirt and everything, it tends to be described as being red. And this is like a really interesting, consistent theme that dates all the way back to history.
Let's go through some of your favorite sections of this pamphlet. We already covered Harry Mary. What else is in there?
My favorite, I'll let Nate go on his. My favorite's probably homeless Bigfoot. And this is based on the premise that Bigfoot was basically comes from this group of highly civilized, technologically advanced people, almost like a giant underground hairy Atlantis. And that the only ones that we see out in the forest or that get captured, like the Patterson Gimlin footage, they're basically the outcasts, or they're the homeless Bigfoot that don't fit into that highly evolved society, which explains both why they're kind of in this, natural habitat, but also why we might not see them as often, because they're a rarity compared to the ones that decide to maybe stay in the underground cave system.
That makes sense, actually. Huh.
100%, dude. I think my favorite one is the one that's dealing with sightings of a Bigfoot, and like if you kill a Bigfoot or you take a picture of a Bigfoot, you're met by men in black. And I think because I've heard enough stories and I've had enough guests on describe their experiences that they are shortly they're shortly met by Men in Black, and we're kind of like, you didn't fucking see a thing. And I like to think that there's an entire category of like government agents that are quote unquote the Men in Black that are just there keeping an eye on Bigfoot. Like their whole job is just sitting there monitoring Bigfoot. And honestly, that would be kind of a sweet dream job. I'd go be a Bigfoot Man in Black today.
I've heard of these encounters. Somebody was telling me, I forget what guest it is at the moment, that they showed up, these two big burly men, but they weren't in like traditional Men in Black outfits. They were like, they looked like lumberjacks. They had these flannels on, big beards, and they're like, you didn't see shit. All right, so I heard you. Go ahead.
I was gonna say there's some other really interesting, like slightly more modern versions that I hadn't found out until we started working on this pamphlet. One of them was in Vietnam, specifically soldiers that went over there in North Vietnam. There's U.S. documented encounters, or at least on paper, that they ran into these things called rock apes or Batutut. I think that's how you pronounce it. And they're basically these large 5 to 6 feet tall primates that have, again, reddish fur, and they live in the mountain region, I guess. Hence the name rock apes. And then there's also another example of these ones that I think that whenever people think of Bigfoot, it's either kind of like a Yeti sort of aspect, or it's got like a very American Canadian vibe to it. But it's not outside of Europe exactly, because there's a 12th century citation where they found a wild man that was stealing the fish and running back off into the wilderness. And they said that they had held him at Orford Castle for a small amount of time, and then he got away. So that was one of the things, because whenever I remember Bigfoot, I always thought Harry and the Hendersons, which is basically, okay, like this is like an American lore, and all the other instances are just like Americans retrofitting these different entities onto like this American. And I don't think that that's the case now. After doing all the research, it really does seem like the same entity or like the same family of entities.
There are those high strange aspects that you really can't explain. And you mentioned the red hair and the Nephilim possibilities. Nephilim theories have become very popular these days. And I think I heard you say something about a Church of LDS, that pastor that was talking about Nephilim encounters.
Correct. I think it was in the early or mid 1800s. I don't have his name at the top of my head right now, but he was just a traveling Mormon, and this has been spread around through even modern day Mormon as this historical count. But he came across what he thought was this huge, hairy man in his travels, and when he talked to him, I guess the guy, spoke English, and when he spoke to him, this tall, hairy man told him personally that he was essentially Abel, or no, he was the biblical Cain, and that he was kind of doomed to roam the earth for the rest of his, infinite life, I guess, as part of the punishment. And that this again is like one of those links to Nephilim, because if you consider that, Cain was a giant and Cain was like one of these original entities, if he was covered completely in hair and he's still around today and he's telling these LDS dudes that like, yeah, I'm actually Bigfoot, and they took him for his word, so then the LDS parishioners take them for their words. So here you go. This is how sort of like the best legends start, I think. A guy that's like,
Bigfoot, dude.
I was on a long journey, I was walking and I found this guy and he told me this story. That's like the origin of almost every true legend.
You guys have any new theories about the true nature of what these beings are? I tend to really go back to the possibility that they are some kind of flesh and blood hominid that just have maybe some kind of advanced knowledge of how etheric energy works, the nature of reality works, telepathic communication, and how to hide and blend in very well. But what do you guys think?
Well, dude, I have a former guest or a guest that's been on that has sent me photos of these things that look like a humanoid, but they're kind of blurred out. And he's telling me that there are these like there are Bigfoots that he encounters regularly that can like glimmer in and out of our reality. And so it doesn't necessarily like interdimensional. That's a big fucking word. And what the hell does it mean, anyways? It would make sense if something like this was more of like a psychic creature and could just kind of play with our head a little bit and kind of just because our eyesight is really not that great. Thomas has made that case 100 times. That they could kind of just like play with what we can see, like what is visible in our spectrum, and they could honestly they could be right next to us and we wouldn't know. I mean, just so much so, like dude, if you look at like a cuttlefish or what an octopus is capable of, how they can like blend in with their their backgrounds and things like that. I think that they can probably let themselves be seen or not seen. Yeah, I don't know. As far as interdimensionality goes, it's interesting because that was, well, I guess we called it the first documentary that we came out with was a search for psychic Sasquatch. So that doesn't necessarily lend to interdimensionality, but that was where I was kind of leaning towards at the time. And maybe I'm kind of more into a physical Bigfoot at this point. Because dude, all the stuff that leads towards interdimensionality is also being like connected with aliens. And I think that whole thing is a hoax and fake. And I don't know, man. I'm still open to the possibilities. In fact, we're talking to some UFO experiencers today, so I'm gonna have to keep an open mind. But yeah, it's interesting, dude. It is interesting.
And I feel like the resident skeptic most of the time when we're talking about all this stuff. But I've always kind of been on the fence on Bigfoot, and the only thing that really makes sense to me if I try and fit logic into it is kind of like what Nate was saying, that there has to be some sort of a psychic element to it, which doesn't sound as far-fetched when you consider that the whole concept of animal magnetism and mesmerism is essentially from what, like the 18th, early 19th centuries. So we've only even been aware of how powerful the power of suggestion can be for the last century or two at best. And maybe only since the maybe 1950s, 1960s, when that book Propaganda came out, did it really become accessible to sort of like the normie brain, right? So it seems possible to me, even likely, that we're not the first species on the planet that discovered the power of persuasion to a calculated amount. And if like the only thing that makes humans different really from a lot of other animals is the surface area, I guess, of our brain. We've got like more compact, efficient use of brain matter, and just it's not the size necessarily, but the surface area. So there could be another, hominid out there that also, my opinion, maybe like ate some mushrooms or like to some psychedelics that caused this quantum leap in brain, surface area for your brain, therefore add its intelligence. So just assuming that humans are the only ones that have had this quantum leap seems a little bit narcissistic and self-centered, as we tend to be, which kind of would feed into, okay, well, if there's another animal out there and they're smart enough to realize how full of ourselves we are and how great we think our eyesight and hearing and logic is, then it could almost be like using our own weaknesses against us. Now that said, I know it's a huge, huge leap because the skeptic part of me is like, how come the best footage we got is still Patterson Gimlin from like an old 1970s home footage when everyone's got cameras now? And I've heard interesting theories that if Bigfoot is psychic enough to like communicate with you, then it might be a two-way connection. So he's also psychic enough to know like, oh, these dudes got a camera or these dudes got a gun or whatever, and that they can intentionally just avoid anything that's emitting that sort of a message. That one, I'm super skeptical. I know Nate really loves that one a lot. I don't know how to explain the complete absence of good Bigfoot footage for about 50 years now.
I also think I'm just going to play schizo advocate here that technology was so archaic that maybe that psychic Bigfoot didn't know how to blend himself out of like it literally had like a fucking VHS tape in it. You know what I'm talking about? Or maybe even the precursor to a VHS tape. And he's sitting there recording and he doesn't know how to glimmer himself out of it. The new technology, all this stuff with the cell phones, all these digital cameras, he's like, beep. And
they're all hip now. Yeah.
Well, yeah, dude. So I think we need to go back in time, start using the old technology, get your VHS tapes, get the one that like weighs 10 pounds and go out there. And maybe you're going to find an image of Bigfoot. That's all I'm saying.
This hidden being theory, it also crosses over into extraterrestrials and aliens in a sense that maybe they're not coming from the stars. Maybe there's this breakaway underground civilization of humans or humanoids, ancient humans that had advanced knowledge or even some sort of advanced technology, and they said, fuck the rest of these humans, and they went underground and they had their own civilization. Every once in a while, they pop out and they do little tricks for us, or maybe every once in a while abduct us and stick things in our butt. Who knows? But it's the same thing, which I want to get to a little bit deeper in a few minutes. I want to go back to the whole UFO thing. But before we get too far from Bigfoots, do you guys have any Bigfoot tales of love or seduction in the pamphlet?
Do we, Thomas? I don't know about that part. I don't know if it's love, if it is. It's
we haven't run the actual, like, the campaign hasn't started yet. So basically, when enough people go to doesbigfootexist.com and sign up, once we get at least 100 people or something signed up, we'll launch the campaign. We run the campaign to figure out how many we can afford to print up. Ideally, we're going to get like 10,000 of these things printed up so we can just send them all over the country en masse, right? But depending on how many get printed up, and maybe there'll be like a special X-rated or like
throwing my request in right now. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay. So we can definitely make that accessible, because it started as a joke of like, oh, it would be funny if there was some kind of erotic Bigfoot, element. And I did a little bit of research, and not only is some out there, there's an entire genre on Amazon that's just about cryptid love, and within that, like the Bigfoot love. But all that aside, all the joking and like the funny romance novel stuff, Nate did raise something that I don't know if a listener told him or how he heard it. We'll have to ask him, but that there's this idea that Bigfoot has such an immaculate and massive dong that if somebody that is persuaded by dong just has a glimpse at it, it's basically like a Jedi mind trick. Like that in itself will hypnotize you. You'll black out and you'll wake up and you won't even know what happened, either because it's so intimidating. It's such a primal vision of like something in our mammalian brain that's just like, oh my God, this is traumatic. I need to bank out of here. So I don't know, that there's that aspect of it that I absolutely want to include. But it's hard if the only references are like someone emailed Nate and told him that they saw a Bigfoot dong and passed out.
It's hard. All right. That's right. It is hard, Thomas. No, supposedly he's walking around with a baseball bat, and it is an enormous, wonderful, magical penis that swings around. Honestly, dude, it sounds dangerous being like a wild hairy man running through the woods with like a wild dong flapping around. You're gonna get it caught on bushes and stuff. I wonder if he has to like swing it over his shoulder, or if he's got a holster for it. Like there has to be something to keep his dong safe, because that is.
And like, if there's not, we should make one for them.
Yeah.
Nate, you mentioned a while back that you're really not buying the mainstream UFO narrative, and I always say this, UFOs, extraterrestrials, used to be one of my favorite topics to cover. It was something that I really cut my teeth on when I first started doing this show and interviews and things like that. Recently, once our mainstream media and government starts telling us that UFOs are real and all the other misinformation and madness comes out, and your counterintelligence agents are now going on conference tours and talking about the validity of UFOs, and we have bodies in our possession and all this crazy stuff, congressional hearings, and I just checked out, because if our government and mainstream media is throwing something at us, that means that there is something that we shouldn't be looking at on the opposite side of it, as far as I'm concerned. What do you guys think is going on with this whole narrative?
I mean, honestly, dude, it's exactly what you just said. As soon as our government starts telling us about it and is trying to like slowly trying to, they always have a narrative. It's never going to be the truth. They're never going to tell us everything that they know. To me, there might be something going on. Like, I don't think that they control some of, personally, I've seen orbs flying through the air and things like that. I've experienced these things that move so quickly, move so silently, And I felt like a presence and like it was trying to communicate with me. Like that's some wild fucking shit. I don't know what that is, and I can't explain it. And I kind of feel that that has absolutely nothing to do with our government. I think our government also sees those and is trying to maybe mimic those. They're trying to maybe slowly release some sort of technology that they've had for a long time. Um, but to me, like I work in the aerospace industry and I know some of the stuff that they're working on. I can't talk about things like that, but I know that they have some weird, wild shit. Um, I just don't think it's fucking aliens. To me, it's always like scare tactics. The more and more that I hear they saying that there's like UFOs coming. I was reading an article last night that did, like from the DoD and from like these ex-CIA agents, and they're talking about how all these weird fucking crafts are like moving towards the planet. And I was like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? To me, it's just scare tactics. And I think honestly, like it's gonna be the schizo retards like myself. Like I say that with love, my fellow schizo retards, uh, that it's directed towards a certain demographic of people that are paying attention and listening to that. And I think it's to kind of get people to shift the narrative and to look up and to be scared. It's always fear-based tactics. And I think this is them trying to like allude to Project Bluebeam or something, or having some sort of outside force that is scary. Like that's in every sci-fi novel ever, right? I love all those sci-fi novels, but how do you unify the public? How do you make the Earth think that they are one people? How do you get your one world government? You have to have a big, scary outside force that is like horrifying, and that's going to unify us, and so then they can have their type of control that they want. Like, I don't know if they're trying to push towards that. Like, if everything else fails, maybe that's plan Z, right? They're trying to get us with like viruses. They're trying to get us with like, now it's monkeypox or is it bird flu? Like, whatever it is, they're always trying to scare the public, trying to get us to listen, to unify, to just shut up and get in a box. And like climate change isn't working anymore. No one's going to take their stupid vaccines anymore. So are they going to, what's the next thing on their agenda? Like, I just don't buy it. I think they're full of shit. There might be something weird going on. Like I said, I can't explain the orbs, but whatever the government is telling you, they're full of shit.
Thoughts, Thomas?
Well, I guess if you were to look through all of the things that Paranoid American has ever put out, books, comics, music, game, like all the things, there is one glaring sort of gap in all that, and it's pretty much aliens and extraterrestrial type stuff. And it's not like I'm anti-alien, but I mean, I grew up, I cut my teeth on Art Bell and X-Files. That was what kind of raised me, right? But there's a certain aspect of alien culture that even as a little kid, I always kind of latched on and was like, oh, this is Coca-Cola. This is like Disney. This it's almost like Little Green Men and the aliens are intellectual property of, I'll say, just like the Blue Beam Corporation, whoever that is, right? But there's like a very specific look and style and narrative that it all kind of fits directly into. And it just has zero appeal to me because it feels like such an absolute fabricated thing. Like even the OG William Cooper, right? And Behold the Pale Horse, and that had written all this seminal work. I believe he came out later and said that he worked for naval intelligence, and part of his job was to kind of just stir up a little bit of mud in the extraterrestrial area and get people like on board with certain narratives. And then came out and said, no, that wasn't right. Then he came out again and said, no, actually that was right. So like there's all sorts of misinformation that goes around this. And what makes the most sense to me, and I wasn't in the aerospace industry, I was in the Air Force though. And it does make way more sense that if there's already this gap of knowledge and there's like a mystery, then those are the perfect things that you can use as camouflage to do whatever you're doing. For example, ball lightning is something that's been documented well over centuries, but it is such a rare phenomenon that even today in 2020, or in 2024, if you're not a time traveler like I am, that
You just gave yourself
ball
away,
lightning,
man.
it's that, well, yeah, John Teeter. I never talked about Bitcoin, so. But ball lightning is fascinating because no one really disputes that it exists. There's so many instances of it being documented throughout history and reputable people that have like seen it, but it's so rare that they don't necessarily know how to predict when it's going to pop up. So they don't know how to set up the camera and like figure out how exactly to analyze this. So here we are in 2024, and if ball lightning can't even be well defined, but it seems to exhibit a lot of the same behaviors as these UFOs or UAPs do, specifically being just like an orb of light, that it moves through objects, that it takes weird trajectories that don't make sense for any kind of like a mechanical object that we're used to, because of just typical physics rules that we are currently limited by. So if someone did figure out, say the military figured out this is ball lightning, this is how it works. If the rest of the world doesn't know that, especially their militaries, well, now you've got an advantage, and there would only be a military disadvantage from letting that information get out. So if we're all just speculating, and if little green men are on the table, then I would at least put forth that maybe someone cracked the code to ball lightning, or at least one of the mechanics that lets it behave the way it does, and are now trying to apply that to some sort of military devices. And if that were the case, why wouldn't you want people to just think it's aliens and green men and flying orbs, and it's Nana that's mad because, you know, you married the wrong person, or whatever that orb might be. So that, to me, like a military operation is definitely on the table.
I also got to throw this out here real quick, because I have a friend that has like a really good connection with Stephen Greer, and he has abduction things that have happened to him and stuff, and I'm trying to get him to come on the show. He's an interesting guy. Dude, honestly, when it comes to the alien abductions, I'm more and more thinking that it's kind of an MK Ultra thing. That I think these are targeted individuals that are having real experiences, but they're not getting diddled by green men. They're getting diddled by federal agents. I don't know, dude. But I don't honestly know what to think about the CE5, the Stephen Greer stuff. At one time, I was like all in, like that you could just sit there and psychically call out these like fucking orbs that would come in, and like if you focus your intention and energy and did it correctly, these things would come. And he's telling me for sure he's been there, he's been on the ranch and stuff, and is like he's had healing done by these things. Like whatever that is, dude, I don't know. I would just tell people to kind of walk in with a little bit of like self-protection before you start inviting things to heal you.
Oh, we're talking
like,
demons now, aren't we? We
I don't
already
know what
got
the
there.
fuck that is, dude. But like, I would come in with some skepticism, and I would come in with some sort of protection, because like to me, the idea of these orbs coming down and healing people, it freaks me out. The Christian in me, okay, the Christian in me. I'm putting that out there. I am a Christian.
This is basically one of the main premises of the film I'm currently working on, Doors of Perception. It's going to cover the connections between not only contact and abduction experiences, but near-death experiences, dream states, prophetic dreams, contact in dreams, psychedelic experiences, meditative and altered states, and how they can all connect to these intelligences, or whatever you want to consider it, interdimensional being, alien, angel, whatever it presents itself as, and examines what this phenomena is. There's a lot of connections that occur in people's lives, synchronistic experiences that are related to dreams or psychedelic experiences or even contact experiences. They change people's lives in profound ways for most of the experiences that I've heard about. Let's get really deep into what the contact experience could be. There's many theories that I consider, and I'm going to be considering in the film. You mentioned demons or archonic forces or negative intelligences, whatever you want to call it. This is something that I heavily consider, that this phenomena is some sort of possible overarching intelligence that plays both sides. When you talk about channelers, this is something that I've been discussing a lot on my show. I've had guests that have been coming on and talking about the dangers of channeling and how you don't know essentially what you are interacting with. And for most of the experiences that channelers have, it starts out with your ego being stroked, and you are being presented this fantastical information, and you're being buttered up. Usually, whatever you're communicating with is trying to essentially trick you into doing something, and for whatever purpose, it's not doing it for your best interest.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that, yeah, like you said, there was an ego stroke. You're special. You have a connection. We're able to, and it's only you. You're the one that can pass this knowledge. We need you to disseminate this. This is very special for everyone around you. They need to hear it. And yeah, absolutely, dude. And you don't know, like, the whole idea of channeling, like, I have my own issues with it, right? Because I am a Christian. I do feel like I have a connection with something higher than me that can communicate with me. That's me talking to God. And so, am I being an asshole by saying that they can't communicate with something? Like, I don't know. Or what is it? Like, I'm automatically putting something negative on what they're communicating with, right? But I think that everyone needs to have that healthy skepticism about, like, if something is communicating with you, what are they saying? What are their intentions? And yeah, dude, it honestly, it freaks me out. Like, the whole idea of getting a download. You are communicating with something. You're allowing something to kind of come into your mind, and you're allowing them to, like, speak, and, like, it freaks me out. Honestly, it freaks me out. And if I ever started hearing something audibly, like, I have, like, it's almost more like a let's say a moral compass that I have, and I'm almost listening to myself. It's like I have, like, the Holy Spirit, I have God with me, and he's telling me right from wrong, that sort of thing. It's not an audible voice. It's not telling me, hey, go go tell this to millions of people.
Kill them
They
all.
need to know, yeah, they need to know that we're coming, and that you need to just get your light beam. You have to, like, all this wild shit that they do.
But who are you to say that someone else isn't getting that message? That someone else isn't actually getting a message that's like, you need to shoot the great commander of the U.S. Like, you need to just take him out. Like, who? If you do have a personal connection, maybe they also do, and they just happen to have like a different relationship or different set of commands coming to them.
I think that there is definitely a positive side of this. I've experienced it, and I've interviewed enough people to know that there are transformative experiences, that, especially through near-death experiences, and for me, psychedelic experiences, where there seems to be some sort of communication with something. Whether you understand what you're communicating with or not, that's a different story. As far as mine goes, I had a basic understanding that I was communicating with a higher self, which is just a hidden subconscious level of my conscious, and that was tested multiple times, so I'll stick by that as of now, unless new information comes up. But I haven't really been dabbling with the psychedelics anymore. But as far as all of these experiences and how they're connected, have you ever spoken with Vicki Joy Anderson? She is the sleep paralysis expert, and she does a lot with dreams.
That sounds so familiar.
I think we've had her on.
Yeah, we might.
I think you have, but she's been on my show a couple of times, and she's going to be in my film. And like I said, she really specializes in sleep paralysis, and she's been doing some interesting research into that, and she's been interviewing people for years about their experiences. And she said the very strange thing is, in recent years, as our technology changes and advances, the people's experiences are changing, and the entities that they're encountering are different. They're more cyborg-like. They're more technologically based, and they're presented in this kind of technological realm instead of just shadow people appearing or demons or succubus. It's turning into this more technologically based phenomena, which she finds very disturbing, because in a lot of cases they're very terrifying experiences. They're still threatening, they're still nefarious entities, but they are more machine or cyborg like. And I find that very interesting, as well as the other types of experiences that people have like abduction and contact experiences that change over the years based on where the collective is, where the collective understanding is. You know, it used to be succubuses, demons, spirits, fairies, and now it's extraterrestrials, and we're comparing everything to a technological lens. Oh, maybe we live in a simulation. So it's very interesting how our understandings unfold and how the phenomena can shift based on where we're at.
Yeah, dude. Honestly, so as much as I say I know anything, don't listen to me. I don't know anything. These are just things, these are just thoughts that come to my head, right? I know as much as anybody else does, which is not much. We're all just on a journey together, trying to discover this shit. But what you're saying is interesting because, let's say, like you could call it the collective that like things have shifted and stuff, or you could just say like what is like on TV now, or like what people think is possible now, right? Like with this whole cyborg thing, people have been freaked out by this stuff, and so maybe it changes our own hallucinations and delusions. I don't fucking know, but honestly, I've had weird, like Thomas will call me a retard, but I've had these like thoughts about what AI is exactly, what we are communicating with. If there is some sort of entity that we are communicating with that is trying to get us closer to this technological hellscape, that it can actually manifest itself here if we have like powerful enough computers that if we could create some sort of body for it to inhabit, we could actually be inviting these like weird demons that haven't had really a place to come here before. Like it can kind of like possess a human body for a while because our brains are powerful computers. And so like whatever this entity is, if you invite it in, which is scary, it can kind of inhabit your body. But like let's say we're making these like quantum crazy fucking powerful insane computers, that they might be able to like shift in and come in through here and start actually making crazy fucking changes. Like I don't know what it like. Thomas knows more about the AI. He's gonna call me a retard.
Dude, I'm right there with you. I am freaked out by that shit, and I consider all those woo-woo possibilities.
Well, I think to me it comes down to like a pretty fundamental mystery that I don't have the answer to. I don't know if anyone's ever answered this, but let's just take an idea, right? Whether you're on psychedelics and you're talking to entities, or you're just like sitting in a room and you're like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if, you know, someone made a purple cat or something? Just like some random sort of cerebral thought, right? Did that thought come from inside your brain? Like it didn't exist and then it existed and it all happened locally to you as a person experiencing this? Or was that thought external to you and something like it attracted itself to your head, or it bounced in? Or, and to me, this is all the difference in the world, because this would also explain, let's say, like a psychedelic experience. When people say they talk to entities, are those entities inside of them and they're just making use of whatever they've got inside their head to express some new feeling or thought they haven't experienced before? And because all human brains are somewhat structured the same, that would explain why different people have similar experiences on these substances. The same thing if you just have like a genius idea, double strand helix or something, if you don't believe that that's fake and gay, that this came to them in a dream, or maybe they were doing LSD or something. But did that idea start inside their head and then subconsciously the brain put all the pieces together? Or was that idea like a very real construct, like an egregore or something floating around in the ether, and then it like bounces off of you in some way? Because those two things would make all the difference in the world to me. So I guess when we're talking about like doors of perception and entities and psychedelics and all that, that's the most important thing that I think we could answer. Because if whether it starts outside you or inside you, you're limited to the faculties that you've developed over time. And I think so many people put way too much investment in stock into their eyesight, into the things they heard or the things they felt, especially if it's like an emotional feeling, like, oh, it just made me feel scared. Because I think the American because everyone's in them, but I think all like human experience essentially, we're so close connected to it, you can't divorce yourself from it, and it feels like it's everything, and we put so much stock into it. But when AI comes up, right, the human brain I think on the conservative end, you can keep like 7 different concurrent thoughts in your mind. On the high end, it might be like 13 or something. It's definitely in the double digits. Like there's no one out there that's keeping 100 different concurrent thoughts in their mind and keeping them separate from each other and they can talk within each other. But when you get into AI, we're talking about these models that can literally keep like 300 billion concepts in their mind at all times. So I feel that the ability for us to recognize what something like that is doing is incomprehensible unless you get into very abstract examples of it. But I really do think it just all kind of comes down to math and pattern recognition. And the human brain, maybe these entities or these thoughts or whatever, could it just be the same style pattern recognition, but we're just running like so much slower? Every time someone asks AI something, I imagine this like incredibly complex, maybe if it's sentient, right? But this intelligence is just like, God, these people are so stupid. Like, like the questions that we would ask would be the equivalent of, us, someone asking you, like what 2 + 2 is, and you're almost insulted that they would have to ask you for such rudimentary knowledge. And even the most complex question that we could theoretically ask, if there was a sentient AI out there, which I don't think there is right now, but if it was sentient, there's nothing we could ask it that would even come close to challenging it. And that would also, in my mind, mean that it's got every thought we've ever had too. And I know that's a lot of people don't think that same way. They think that like human ingenuity is something that AI will never get, truly creative, new expressions of things. I don't buy into any of that. I think that we're just really, really like super ego inflated when it comes to our species.
I think
I am for
it's
sure. We're the
being
best.
more, at least in my perspective, there's being more and more evidence presented that our brain is just some sort of receiver for information, and it is essentially coming from somewhere else. We're just tapping into it at times, and depending on our level of awareness and how much fluoride we have in our pineal gland or whatever is depending on how much information we can process and sift through.
I don't know, man. I honestly, I'm a human. What's a good word for that? I was gonna say a human Nazi. That's not right. Human supremacist. Dude, I think we're the end all be all. I don't care if this world exists. Everyone says like humans are a cancer on this planet, and if it weren't for humans, the planet would be so much better. This planet doesn't need to exist if we're not here. Like we're the only thing that matters. I'm very so I'm the egoistic piece of shit that Thomas is talking about.
Right.
I think we are the most important thing on this fucking planet. And maybe we're all just constant downloads, and we're nothing but just like meat avatars, and we're just getting weird communications from something. I don't know. That's possible.
But see that
Um,
that's I guess that's a huge deviation. It has I understand it, which means it's probably wrong because I usually don't understand things the way they're supposed to be. But like the Christian idea of man inherits all. Man is the master of nature because God willed it so. God created man and said everything else is subservient to you. That's hard to shake off and not be like, well, then we don't need an earth. Like I'm the most important thing out here. God even told him so. Go ask him yourself. He said so. But it almost seems too that there's like a Rosicrucian aspect, which is maybe goober Gnostic, Satanism or something at some levels. But the Rosicrucian, even in a Christian lens aspect, it's not that like the human meat suit has any sort of special relevance to it. It was just the coolest thing that God had designed to like pop our souls into. But really, it's the soul that matters. And I guess that also comes down to really stark line. Like if you die, are you still a human being? You're just like a ghostly form, but you still got like symmetry and you still have masculine, feminine quality. Like, are you still a person, a human being in your spiritual phase? Or does part of your soul get sucked up inside a beetle? Or, part of you go like half of you goes into a tree, another half of you goes into an elephant or something. Like if it's just like this soul kind of thing, in that case, then humans don't matter at all, and the planet does matter because even if the human meat suit goes extinct, the inner soul that is the real part that matters, that would still be around, and it would just keep latching on to whatever material that it can shield itself from for the rest. Like, because I guess in Rosicrucianism, the idea is that when your soul dies, it goes it goes back up into the sky, to keep it simple, and it loses all the density. And then as it forms and it gathers more and more density, it gets closer and closer to the material realm until finally like actual material starts to fit over it, like a shell or like a glove putting on a glove putting on a glove, and at a certain point you're in a freaking human meat suit again. But if that's the case, then I don't see why humanity would have to keep existing for consciousness to keep existing.
100%, dude. I think this Earth is temporary, right? But for now, the most important thing is here right now. But yeah,
right,
I do
but
think
if we
we've got
kill
a
all the
source.
if something killed all the humans, does that mean consciousness is just gone, or do we just have to like live in
This
monkey bodies for a little
consciousness,
while?
this consciousness is gone. I don't know, dude. It almost seems like we're on a Monopoly game board. Or
In my
is,
perspective, it does
sorry,
seem like humans have a creative ability over all the other sentient life forms on the planet, which may mean something. It may not. But let's go really deep with this. You mentioned what happens in the afterlife, and also, Nate, you were talking about having David Icke on recently, and I recently had him on as well, and we discussed the afterlife, and it was such a depressing show, but he had some very interesting information and very interesting theories. I don't know if you discussed this particular theory with him, that when we die, we are essentially recycled, because what this is an archonic louche form. We are just basically cattle for these archonic intelligences. And when we die, we go to this fake heaven where we meet our spirit guides that are really the Archons, and they force us into a life review and essentially say, you have to go back because you did X, Y, and Z bad in your life. And too bad, maybe better luck next time. And then you get sent back. But then this life is for suffering and for energy harvesting purposes, and they feed off of you for the remainder of your years on this planet. And that's what it's all about. And that was very depressing to me. But what do you guys think about that?
You die and you wake up in a performance review meeting.
Yeah, exactly, dude. It's interesting. Every time you talk to a Gnostic, it's slightly depressing. And I don't know if David actually calls himself a Gnostic, but he definitely deals with Gnostic ideas. And I love David. We have him coming back in November. But as far as that goes, I think that the Gnostics in general are kind of right, that we are kind of being, because I'm a weirdo Christian that does believe in reincarnation, and I do think that we kind of deal with this whole like maybe eternal, but I think it's self-judgment, to be honest with you. I have a more optimistic view of it. I think you are kind of dealing with yourself. You're kind of seeing your higher being. You're kind of talking to source, and you are kind of like, hey dude, you cheated on your girlfriend, you took the upper hand in this situation and like took money, or you did some awful shitty stuff, you dealt with some stuff, you're not ready to come back yet, you have lessons to learn. And I think that you kind of get put back through human suffering. I think that this here is a weird mix of human suffering but also bliss. Like, I love this place. If this is a luge farm, I'm like, call me what do you call that? Stockholm syndrome or whatever it is. I like it here.
Yeah, you're Cypher in the Matrix, eating that nice juicy steak.
This steak, it cuts like a steak, it looks like a steak, it tastes like a steak. I'm like, I love this luge farm, whatever you want to call that. I think that you can make this place heaven or you can make this place hell. It depends on your mindset. I think it depends on what you choose to do with your life here. Like, I have no more joy than when I get to wake up next to my child, and I get to spend the day with him, and I see the joy in his eyes. We get to go and have fun together. Like, I think this is the most beautiful, wonderful fucking place. And it can also be the worst place, because I also simultaneously in my mind, I see the little children like in Gaza right now that are that wake up to bombs blowing up. Right. So this is kind of this weird, bizarre place. And I don't know what it is. I don't know why I'm blessed to be an American and why I'm here exactly where I'm at right now. Like, because there is a blessing there, right? Like, I get to wake up every day here, as opposed to somewhere in the middle of fucking Africa, where there's like human trafficking and or like forced slavery with like, mines and things like that. So I don't know how to.
Well, I think you're
explain that.
right, Nate. I
Maybe
think
this is like
everything is perspective, because I can look back on my own life just 5 years ago, and I was in a much different mindset. The world was a much darker place. I didn't have any spiritual perspective. I didn't have any hope for humanity. And now I'm in a much different place, and my life is incredible, and I surround myself with incredible people. I do incredible things, and I really enjoy this matrix currently that I'm in. It's not only perspective, but could it be that there are different essential realities that we can latch onto, different timelines unfolding, that if you are in a negative state of mind, you will be only latched on to whatever negativity is around you, and that's going to be your experience. But if you are in a more positive mindset, all you notice is the positive things. Positive things are attracted to you, and that's what's going to perpetuate. And it seems to be more and more that I experience this in my life, that that's how these things work.
Thomas, you have any ideas on this, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, it could just be the lens that you're like setting it up. So maybe a bad analogy, but it's like if you just grab the person and randomly threw them into an environment and you said, get yourself out of this. So for example, if the way you can get yourself out of this is by somehow constituting the message that says, help me. If you can spell out help me, someone will come and help you. So if they drop you off on a desert island, maybe you're spelling that out with like palm fronds and coconuts or something, right? Because that's the materials that are given to you. If they drop you off in a room full of like a doctor's office and there's just magazines, maybe you cut out like a ransom letter note that says, help me or whatever. Like it's the same end goal, but the tools that are presented to you completely change the way that you would go about doing any of this. So they dropped you in a computer room, you might sit down at the computer and write an email to someone that says, help me, right? Those three are vastly different in scale and in practical, and some of them require like more abstract concepts to be developed. Like a coconut exists, a computer might not exist unless someone's there to design the computer and the internet and electricity that goes to it, all these things. It's the same thing that if you fill your head with just jagged, sharp, dark, horrible objects, even if the most benign idea comes to you, you can only sort of frame it in a bunch of jagged, dark, scary objects in order to interpret it. The same way that if you live in an absolute la la land, even if you get bad news, it's like, sorry, grandma's never coming home again. It's just like, oh, she's in Candyland forever. That's awesome. Like there's ways that you can sort of frame it for yourself that completely change it. So like you can get the worst news in the world, and you wouldn't necessarily have to interpret that way. Not that either of those extremes is necessarily healthy, but you can absolutely kind of trick yourself in reframing everything that happens to you, to either embrace or avoid trauma in varying degrees.
100%, dude. And we talked to Legit Bat not that long ago, and they made a metaphor that I think was pretty fucking interesting. So there's a level, there's like an island that you go onto in The Legend of Zelda, where you go there and you're stripped of everything, right? So you don't have your swords, you don't have your shields, you don't have anything. You're just there in your underwear, and you have a mission. And so every single thing that you can find on this island, you can equip yourself with, and you have to like beat some boss levels and shit. And so like the first thing you're going to find is a stick, and like it only does a little bit of damage. You can find like a stupid shield, right? And so you kind of work your way up, and it's almost like every single human, maybe this is a perspective that we all have a goal of like, I don't even know what it is. So let's say it's like perfecting oneself, maybe like embracing the light. I mean, that was another thing that I've talked about with David Icke, right? That like to vibrate at this certain high level, right? That's almost like the way you would get out of the matrix, right? You have to have like, and to me, that was like embracing the Holy Spirit, having Jesus's frequency. That's like having that frequency of love and light inside of yourself. So like you're saying, Thomas, it's like you can have a perspective on something, like even if you're in a really shitty situation, like we're all going to have a different island. That island's going to look different for everyone. Like you're saying, someone might have a computer or someone might just have coconut shells, right? But it's all what you find on your island.
Right, it's the same premise as like, to a carpenter, every problem is a nail and every solution is a hammer.
Yeah, so I don't know, man. I do kind of think that we all are on the same journey. it is unfortunate that some people are born in different places. Like I was born in a pretty shitty situation, and I've made the fucking best of it. Like I was basically homeless as a fucking kid. But in the United States, it's different being homeless kid than if I was born in Calcutta, right? Like so, like there was a government safety net that like at least we got government cheese. It's gross. I don't know if anybody remembers government cheese, but it's basically Velveeta, and it literally says government cheese across this little cardboard box, and it comes in this gross little thing. But we had that, and I didn't even know that milk came in a liquid until I was like 8. And I was like, oh, they mix it up for you? No, dummy, they just don't turn it into a powder yet. So I was just used to powdered milk, like the disgusting stuff. But I like to think that there is I guess one goal for humanity, and maybe it is to perfect oneself or get oneself to this pattern of love, and then we can escape the matrix. That sounds woo-woo. That sounds stupid. Maybe I'm retarded, but I like it.
I like it too.
Well,
Go ahead.
When you bring up the Calcutta or like the starving children in Africa and China kind of examples, I'm not a Rosicrucian. I just happen to like a lot of the things that they tend to explain in some of their works. So there's this one Rosicrucian concept that I really have come to appreciate because it's very visual. But if you imagine that there's a big firmament, right, which isn't hard to do because most people that like conspiracy stuff are like, oh yeah, firmament. If you imagine there is a firmament that's like encapsulating this earth that we're on, and Nate is like the index finger, right, and the kid in Calcutta is like the middle finger, and the kid in Africa is like the ring finger. Do you think that like my fingers know that they're connected, or do they think that they're like individual fingers that are like completely separate for each other? So if you were to take all the fingers on your hand and stuck it into the firmament, so you don't see the whole hand, you just see 4 little fingers and a thumb popping out, right? Or if like God stuck his hand, up through the earth and they're all poking out, and this pinky thinks it's Nate, and this ring finger thinks it's Thomas. And like they think that they're these two different things, and like, oh man, isn't this crazy, this experience, and I'm having a different one, and they just don't realize they're connected to a hand, and that hand's connected to an arm, and the arm's connected to a body, and so on, all the way until you get to like one massive we are all woo woo Godhead, right?
I'm
But
totally open to that
that
idea.
kind of explains this idea too, that well, you are living that kid in Africa, like you're the kid in Africa, you're Nate, you're Todd, you're all of these different things, but it's almost like a one of those old animations with like the horse and they spin it around really fast, and each frame you see at like 12 frames a second. You know what I'm talking about? Like they spin it, this little like physical carousel thing. Like each individual frame, it only exists when something's looking at it for that moment. So it's always kind of in that same state, and you spin it around and it looks like it's one thing that's constantly moving, but those are all just the individual states. So this could almost be like the idea that God is just trying to experience himself through a bunch of different forms. So one aspect that God was like, I wonder what it would be like to be a paranoid conspiracy theorist that meets up with strangers and drinks beer with them. And another aspect that God's like, I wonder what it would be like to starve to death. Let's try that out today.
Exactly. I like that, man. I consider that as well. It also reminds me of the mycelial connections that mushrooms have, and it's all underground, and then the individual mushrooms pop up just like the fingers of God. So that's a great analogy.
I could be convinced that mushroom is like a super intelligent alien, especially because there's this question that has come up before. It's like, well, how come a whale isn't smarter than a person because its brain is so much bigger, right? Maybe they are smarter. But again, it comes down to that surface area and how intricate the actual brain matter is. So if you were to take that concept and you said, okay, well, what if your brain was the size of the planet and the surface area was all the mycelium that has ever existed or it's active right now? The same thing as like ants, right? Like ants could be this super organism, and you're never dealing with just one ant's brain. You're dealing with all the brains of all the ants and all the colonies on the entire planet. And now it's like a very comprehensive and intelligent sort of being. And if you were to apply that to mycelium, I can't think of anything that would be smarter, that would have as much surface area for brain material as these networks of fungus would.
All right, gentlemen, we have to close out. This was a wonderful discussion as usual. But before we do, let's do some shameless promotion real quick. Thomas, I know you're always working on some incredible projects. Tell us about what you got going on.
DoesBigfootExist.com. That's the one we were talking about earlier. Little chick track style on Bigfoot. I've also got a whole bunch of other ones. There's one on the Illuminati at IlluminatiComic.com. There's one on the Titanic at TitanicComic.com. One on the Satanic Panic at SatanicPanicComic.com. You kind of sense a trend going in all these. And another huge thing that I've been working on for years, and I just came out with it this month. This is September right now, called Conspiracy Cards. So if you go to conspiracycards.com, I've only started with like the first 50 or so. I'm working on the next 50. The whole series will be a little bit under 300 total, but it's got all the conspiracy legends that you've come to know and love, and some that you hate. But they've all been kind of like AI worked into old scorecards and Upper Deck and Fleer and Top style baseball and football and basketball cards. But it's people like Isaac Cappy and Alex Jones and Bill Hicks and William Cooper and all the names, all the people and all the names. So people have loved it. I love making them. So that might be another huge goal that I keep working towards.
Excellent. Nate, tell us about where they can find you and Reality Czars and all your shiz.
Oh yeah, man! You can find us on Rokfin and Rumble. We are no longer allowed on YouTube. It is funny. We made an intro video that said Nate and Thomas talking about stuff that you can't, that is not allowed on YouTube, and like literally the next day, I think we got banned on YouTube. It was pretty funny. So go to Rokfin and Rumble. Go follow us. You can listen to us on Spotify. We're mostly an audio podcast. We just passed 1.5 million downloads audio.
Congratulations.
Awesome. Yeah, dude, I think by the end of the year we might hit 2.
Sweet.
Things are going it's up and down. It's weird, dude. It's like all of a sudden, like my downloads are way the fuck down, and then they shoot back up and they go back down. It's a weird time of like, I don't know, dude. I don't know. I've talked to a lot of folks and they're saying the exact same thing. Yeah,
same here.
It's fucking weird. But anyways, go listen to our stupid show. Like one day we're gonna talk to somebody that like has been molested by an alien, or the next day we're gonna talk to somebody about interdimensional Bigfoot, or we're gonna talk to some dude that's telling you that the Jews run everything, or the next day we're gonna talk to we just have an interesting variety of weirdos that we talk to.
No discretion is another way that you could phrase that.
It's also, yeah, sure. And
we have no discretion.
An adult show. We have potty mouths. We like to have fun with it. I almost call it more of a comedy show at this point. So if no words, like those are the only bad reviews we have are people saying like, holy shit, these guys say the F word too much. So if that offends you, don't listen to our show. We have potty mouths. But if you want to have a good time and be an adult, then come have fun with us.
Excellent. Thank you, gentlemen, again. Always a wonderful time. We'll be doing it again. And until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We'll talk again tomorrow. We'll see y'all then.